What you're looking at right now is an endangered species. In fact, it's one of the last of its kind. This is the Asus V16, and it is basically an entry-level gaming laptop, or better put, an affordable gaming laptop. Look, these things have become increasingly rare with some exuberant prices flooding the market as far as gaming laptops and laptops in general are concerned. And Asus knows this, and they've refreshed this thing with some of the latest internals, including Intel's Core 7 240H processor, 16GB of DDR5 memory, NVIDIA's RTX 4050 GPU with 6GB of VRAM, a 512GB solid-state drive, Wi-Fi 6 as well as Bluetooth 5.3 standard, a 16-inch Full HD Plus display, and the hope Asus has with the V16 is to kind of bridge the intricate balance between affordable pricing and a decent gaming experience on the go. And I, for one, am really hoping the V16 can live up to that expectation, because I really want affordable gaming to come back. It's something that's become all too rare nowadays. So we're going to see if this laptop can bridge that gap, so let's get into it. When you buy one of these things, the packaging is pretty straightforward. You get a cardboard box with some basic branding on it. Anyway, open that up. Behind some more protective packaging, here it is, the V16 in the flesh. We'll talk about the design in just a minute. We also do get a 150 watt charging adapter, which makes sense. And then finally, you will notice you have the wall outlet charging cable piece, which is good for extendability. Oh, and I forgot to mention, you of course do get some basic documentation. If I didn't tell you, you would probably be hard pressed to even realize this is a gaming laptop. I mean, just look at the design here. This is the most non-gaming looking gaming laptop I have reviewed in a while, and that's not really a good or bad thing. I mean, Asus has really kept this thing low profile. It's like a laptop undercover. Anyway, with that said, it does have a full plastic build from top to bottom, which is normal in this class segment, but it is very durable and sturdy. It doesn't feel cheap or finicky, which is always a good thing. You do have a weight of about 4.3 pounds, which is actually slightly below the average for your typical 16-inch laptop, so from a portability perspective, that's also great. You are going to pick up some degree of fingerprints and moisture marks over here over a prolonged period of time, but it's not too bad. In terms of I/O ports, things are pretty straightforward. So on one side, you have a DC charging port, a HDMI 2.1 port, you do have a USB-A super speed port, a Type-C port with power delivery and DisplayPort functionality, a headphone jack. On the other side, you have a lone standing USB-A super speed port. They could have added an SD card reader, but honestly, port selection is pretty reasonable. The bottom side of the laptop, pretty straightforward again, so you do have a plastic finishing. It is removable, of course. You'll notice you have bits and pieces of air intake vents all over the place. You do have a dual fan setup, and then you also do have these heat exhaust vents towards the rear side of the laptop, so you do have a decent amount of cooling going on here. And you will notice you do have bottom firing speakers, with these speaker grills being on the corners here. When you unfold this laptop, you are immediately reminded that you have a nice 16-inch form factor, because I mean, look at the generous amount of palm rest space with the chassis over here. However, one thing I really respect here is that, look, traditionally speaking, gaming laptops do not care about their trackpads. They're often afterthoughts, unfortunately. But over here, just look at the sheer size of this trackpad. It is so large. This is a similar size to what you find on Asus's ProArt series of laptops, for example. And while you may have a plastic surface finishing, there is a relatively limited amount of flex over here. The clicks are tactile, the alignment is good, and you have multi-gesture support. Believe it or not, laptops that cost like 5 times as much as this machine often don't have these basic features or considerations, and it's nice to see that we get all of that here. The keyboard is equally as respectable, so you do have easy to read font, nice large keycaps, a good layout. You do have translucency around the WASD keys for some gaming aesthetics, and then you will also of course notice that depending on the model you get blue backlighting built in. Furthermore, you do have a 10 keypad available as well. And then lastly, I do want to mention, as far as the actual typing experience goes, because of the nice height on the keycap, you get a lot of key travel, which actually creates a lot of feedback and tactility, which is great for both gaming and general typing alike. Can't say I'm the biggest fan of the hinge mechanism here. It is definitely wobbly, and there is a little bit of finickiness to it, so make sure you use caution in the long run. With that said though, you do get a full 180-degree tilt, which is pretty cool. Now, as far as the display fitting is concerned, you have a plastic encasing all around over here. You do have a bit of a noticeable chin at the bottom, but that's pretty standard. And then you will notice the side bezels are nice and narrow for good immersion. And then of course you have a moderately thin forehead at the top, again, not too shabby. And you also get a respectable nice full HD webcam that does good enough across most lighting settings. As far as entry-level laptops go, this is actually a pretty decent display for what it is. So you do get a nice 16-inch LED backlit panel here with a full HD plus resolution, which equates to a 16 by 10 aspect ratio. You also get a super smooth 144 Hz refresh rate, and you do get a peak brightness of 300 nits sustained. While that's not the brightest number out there, combined with a well-balanced anti-glare coating, it works well enough. Unfortunately, you are going to be stuck with a base 45% NTSC color rating, so things aren't going to look particularly vivid, but in all fairness, Asus has prioritized the features that are most important for a good gaming experience here. A quick recap of the technical specification on board as well as the ones available. So you do get Intel's Core 7 240H processor, though you can also opt for a lower tiered Core 5 processor. Furthermore, you get 16 gigabytes of DDR5 memory standard, and then you do have NVIDIA's RTX 4050 GPU here with 6 gigabytes of video memory, though you can also opt for a more powerful RTX 5050 with up to 8 gigabytes of video memory. Given the hardware we have here, general productivity like surfing the web or watching 4K content, needless to say, will be a very smooth experience. Advanced productivity-based activities like program and code compilation, again, the Core 7 will just blitz right through and you'll have a great experience on that end. You can even do some 3D modeling thanks to the RTX 4050. While it's not a top-tier GPU, it is more than enough horsepower to actually blitz through these kind of activities and get a nice smooth experience in programs like Blender. Now, as far as 4K video editing goes, it's definitely possible, but we did notice that there was the occasional frame drop if you stacked enough layers. It seems more to be a driver optimization issue in my opinion than a hardware limitation, so I suspect this performance will get better over time, but generally speaking, you get some great performance here. Keeping in mind the purpose of the Asus V16 is to provide you with a nice, smooth, entry-level gaming experience, I think this laptop definitely achieves that on a price to performance ratio. So for example, games that are very demanding on the GPU like Cyberpunk 2077 at the native resolution with DLSS and ray tracing enabled, we're actually sustaining around 45 to 50 frames per second on average. If you turn off ray tracing, you're actually able to hit north of 60 FPS, again with DLSS enabled. Now, games that are really well optimized and had more time to mature in general, like Doom Eternal for example, with DLSS enabled, running at high settings with ray tracing on, we're actually hitting up to 114 frames per second on average, which means you get to truly utilize the 144 Hz display and again make for a great experience. Now, recent titles that have had less time to optimize and mature like Expedition 33 are quite demanding on this laptop, and in those cases you'll be hovering in the low 40 FPS mark if you are running higher settings, but reducing the settings does give you a fair bit of boost in the frame rate department. Games like Counter-Strike Go 2 for example can be completely maxed out, and yes, you will be able to hit around 130 FPS with that setting configured, which means you get to again truly utilize the 144 Hz refresh rate. Here's a quick chart showing all of the games we tested at the highest possible setting with the average frame rate. Of course, keep in mind the V16 is not trying to max out every game. It is trying to give you a sustainable entry-level gaming experience, and I think it does a pretty good job at that. The Asus V16 actually has some pretty decent thermal management. So under an unrealistic peak load, this laptop can hit an average surface temperature of 40 degrees Celsius on the upper third, but a more realistic gaming session will yield around 37 degrees Celsius, which is actually a pretty cool number for a gaming machine. Now, as far as fan noise is concerned, it's pretty average, so you're going to hit numbers in the low 60 decibel mark when you are running under peak loads. It is audible, but nothing out of the ordinary. As far as self-upgradability is concerned, you do have two DDR5 SODIMM slots and you can upgrade to a maximum of 32 gigabytes of memory. Now you also do have a M.2 slot. It is preoccupied, but you can replace it with a higher capacity drive. And then you do have a M.2 module for connectivity upgrades. You do get a relatively small 63 watt-hour battery here, which equates to about a 6-hour runtime with general productivity, though if you are gaming, that number is going to drop to around 1.5 hours, so it's strongly recommended to keep your laptop plugged in when gaming to make sure you get the maximum performance. Of course, the speaker system surprised me in a good way. I mean, I was expecting average performance, but as far as two bottom-firing speaker systems go, it's not bad. You've got a bit of volume, you've got some degree of highs and lows. It's not going to win any awards, but it's good enough for what it is. Here's a quick sound test for reference.
breakdown. Always feel like I could break now, but I never let it take me to that place now.
The Asus V16 in this configuration has a sub $1,000 price tag, and I cannot tell you how incredibly rare that is in today's economy. Gaming laptops are expensive even at the entry level, but Asus does manage to pull it off, and they genuinely create a pretty respectable entry level gaming experience as far as portable gaming goes. It's not easy to find that balance between price and performance, especially this lower in the tier. However, I found that most modern day games run great on this laptop. Sure, you're not going to get the highest possible settings, but this is a machine that gives you a chance to be able to run all those games at great settings with good frame rates, and Asus prioritize the features that matter the most, like a high refresh rate on your display, a good keyboard, and you even get a decent trackpad, which is often a bonus on laptops like these. You also get some nice added functionality like a good webcam, great thermal management, and a decent selection of ports. There are some things that could be better, like the hinge mechanism, which is definitely more on the fragile side, but overall, I think this is a value-oriented device, and it definitely has a good gaming experience, even if this laptop doesn't look like a gaming laptop in anywhere from, at least from the outside. Nonetheless, I think Asus has done a pretty good job here, and I can definitely recommend this laptop. It does occasionally go on sale, so you could save some extra bucks there and get even more value. So make sure you check out the links in the product description below for the latest and greatest information. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the content, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. It genuinely helps me grow and means the world to me. Catch you in the next one.